Hi guys, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please, pretty please, hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a Connect the Dot, an Epiphany, a Mind Explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description of this video. My website, alleycatcreations211.com. Pyramids. I make these. I sell them privately. You can find a lot of stuff on my website, my portfolio, and if you see anything that you like, you can email me. That's also in the description. That's a way of keeping me awake, keeping me going, and helping me out. And today being my father's heavenly 78th birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. I got really great news. I have been monetized on YouTube and I am doing like a membership kind of thing. So I'm not going to do tiers and levels just yet, as my channel's still very little in its infancy of growing. I've been here 3 years, but the growth of the channel will expand. Hopefully, we'll see how this goes. I'm still looking for a part-time job, but if I can get something going here, I'm more than happy to keep actually doing more with the channel. But for now, if you would like to support me, there is a channel membership for $4.99. You're more than happy to enter as a 3D level, third density. So that's an option now. And on Fridays, I've been going live, and there will be, hopefully, we'll see how that works, super chats and all kinds of fun stuff. So there's going to be more than one way to support me. And yeah, I want to thank everybody who contributed to the watch hours, who's helped me through this journey, keep me afloat, keep me alive, literally. So we're going to do the secret doctrine. It's going to be part 2 because, sorry, these stanzas can get really long and very frustrating. So we're going to continue on and hopefully not have pandemonium of last time. But why could not the Babylonian Ezra have adopted the name of Lapitos for one of Noah's sons? The Kabari, who are the Titans, are also called Manes, and their mother Mania, according to Arnobius. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. The Hindus can therefore claim with far more reason that the Manes mean their Manus, and that Mania is the female Manu. Mania is Ella or Ida, the wife and daughter of that V name I still can't pronounce, Manu, from whom he begat the race of Manus. Like Rhea, the mother of the Titans, she is the earth. And she is but the second edition and repetition of Vak. Both Ida and Vak are turned into males and females, Ida becoming Suryumna and Vak the female Vera, turning into a woman in order to punish the Gran Harvas, one version referring to cosmic and divine theogony, the other to the latter period. The Manes and Mania of Arnobius are names of Indian origin, appropriated by the Greeks and Latins and disfigured by them. This is no accident, but the result of one archaic doctrine common to all of that which the Israelites, through Ezra, the author of the modernized Mosaic books, were the latest adapters. So unceremoniously were they with other people's property that Burroughs shows that Titia, of whom Diordius makes the mother of the Titans, or I hate when things are italicized, guys, because I can't see it. The Luvians was the wife of Noah. For this, Faber calls him the pseudo-Berosus, yet accepts the information in order to register one proof more that the pagans have borrowed all their gods from the Jews by transforming patriarchal material. According to our humble opinion, this is one of the best proofs possible of exactly the reverse. It shows as clearly as facts can show that it is the biblical pseudo personages which are all borrowed from the pagan myths, if myths they must be. It shows that at any rate that Berosus was well aware of the source of Genesis and that it bore the same cosmic astronomical character as the allegories of Isis, Osiris, and the Ark and other older archaic symbols. For Berosus says that Titia Magna was afterwards called Artia and worship with the earth. And this identifies Tia, Noah's consort, with Rhea, the mother of the Titans, and with Ida, both being goddess who preside over the earth and the mothers of the Manus and Manes. The Tita Aritia was worshipped as Paracha, says the same Berosus, and this is a title of Vesta, goddess of the earth. Scarce an ancient poet of historic or prehistoric days who failed to mention the sinking of the two continents, often called isles in one form or another, hence the destruction besides Atlantis of the I don't know how to say that. Something with Plegyae, because I am failing in big. Yeah, that's just not chilling out in my mouth. Quote, from its deep-rooted base, the Flalian isle, stern Neptune shook and plunged beneath the waves, its impious inhabitants. End quote. Dionysus. Faber felt convinced that the insulae whatever that word is, I'm done trying, were Atlantis. But all such allegories are more or less distorted echoes of the Hindu tradition about the great cataclysm, which befell the fourth, really human thought, really human, though gigantic race, the one which preceded the Aryan. Yet, as just said, like all other legends, that of the deluge has more than one meaning. It refers in theogony to pre-cosmic transformations, to spiritual correlations, however absurd the term may sound to a scientific ear, and also to subsequent cosmogony, to the great flood of waters, matter, into chaos, awakened and fructified by those spirit rays which were swamped by and perished in the mysterious differentiated pre-cosmic mystery, the prologue to the drama of being. Anu, Bel, and Noah preceded Adam Kadmon, Adam the Red, and Noah just as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva preceded whatever that V name is, and the rest. Yeah, I'm just gonna put a pause here. There are certain words that just don't come out of my mouth properly. No idea. So I do apologize. It gets frustrating. Very frustrating. All this goes to show that the semi-universe deluge known to geology, first glacial period, must have occurred just at this time allowed to it by the secret doctrine, namely 200,000 years in round numbers after the commencement of our fifth race, or about the time assigned by Messiers. Kroll and Stockwell for the first glacial period about 850,000 years ago. Thus, as the latter disturbance is attributed by geologists and astronomers to an extreme eccentricity of the Earth's orbit, and as the secret doctrine attributes it to the same source, but with the addition of another factor, the shifting of the Earth's axis, a proof of which may be found in the book of Enoch. If the veiled language of the Puranas is not understood, all this should tend to show that the ancients knew something of the modern discoveries of science. Enoch, when speaking of the great inclination of the earth, which is in travail, is quite significant and clear. Is not this evident? Noah is Noah, floating on the waters in his ark, the later being the emblem of the Arga or moon, the feminine principle. Noah is a spirit falling into matter. We find him as soon as he descends upon the earth, planting a vineyard, drinking of the wine, and getting drunk on it. The pure spirit becomes intoxicated as soon as it is finally imprisoned in matter. The seventh chapter of Genesis is only another version of the first. Thus, while the latter reads, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, in chapter 7, it is said, and the waters prevailed, and the ark went with Noah and the Spirit upon the face of the waters. Thus, Noah is identical with the Chaldean Noah, is the spirit vivifying matter, which later is chaos, represented by the deep of the waters of the flood. In the Babylonian legend, the pre-cosmical blend with the terrestrial event, it is Ishtar, Azeroth or Venus, the lunar goddess, who is shut up in the ark and sends out a dove in search of dry land. Interesting. What's really interesting, there's a pause here. The Y-Files just did something on this, and his story, his like compile information hits very similar on these points. Very interesting. George Smith notes in the tablets, first, the creation of the moon, and then that of the sun. Its beauty and perfection are extolled, and the regularity of its orbit, which led to its being considered the type of a judge, and the regulator of the world. If this story related simply to the cosmological cataclysm, even where this latter universal, why should the goddess Ishtar or Azeroth, the moon, speak of the creation of the sun after the deluge? The waters might have reached as high as the mountain of Nazir or Jebel Judy, however you say that, the deluge mountains of the Arabian legend, or yet Ararat of the biblical narrative, and even the Himalaya of the Hindu tradition, and yet not reach the sun. The Bible itself stops short of such a miracle. It is evident that the deluge of the people who first recorded it had another meaning, less problematical and far more philosophical than that of an universal deluge, of which there are no geological traces whatever. As all such cataclysms are periodical and cyclical, and as Manu V-name figures as a generic character under various circumstances and events, sorry, there seems to be no serious objection to the supposition that the first great flood had an allegorical as well as a cosmic meaning, and that it happened at the end of the Sata Yuga, the age of truth, when the second root race, sorry guys, The Manu with bones made its primeval appearance as the sweat-born. Jeez Louise. Can't knock this cough. The second flood, the so-called universal, which affected the fourth root race, now conveniently regarded by theology as the accused race of giants, the Canaanites, and the sons of Ham, is, is that flood which was first perceived by geology. If one carefully compares the accounts in the various legends of the Chaldees and other exoteric works of the nations, it will be found that all of them agree with the orthodox narratives given in the Brahmanical books. And it may be perceived that while in the first account there is no god or mortal yet on earth, when Manu Longvine lands on the Himavan in the second, the seven rishis are allowed to keep him company, thus showing that whereas some accounts refer to the sidereal and cosmic flood before the so-called creation, the others treat one of the great flood of matter on earth and the other of a real watery deluge. In the Satapatha Brahma, Manu finds that the flood had swept away all living creatures and he alone was left. The seed of life alone remained from the previous dissolution of the universe, or Mahapralaya, after a day of Brahma, and the Mahabharata refers simply to the geological cataclysm which swept away nearly all the fourth race to make room for the fifth. Therefore, is that Longvine Manu shown under three distinct attributes in our esoteric cosmogony as the root Manu on globe A in the first round, as the seed of life on globe D in the fourth round, and C as the seed of man at the beginning of every root race, in our fifth race especially, the very commencement of the latter witness during the Dvapara Yuga, the destruction of the accused sorcerers of the island, Plato speaking only of its last island, beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean, from which there was an easy transition to other islands in the neighborhood of another large continent, America. It is this Atlantic land which was connected with the White Island, and the White Island was Ruta, but it was not the Attila, maybe, and the White Devil of Colonel Wilford, as already shown. It may well be remarked here that the Dvapara, I don't know how to say that, Yuga, Dvapara, lasts 864,000 years according to the Sanskrit text, and that if the Kali Yuga began only 5,000 years ago, that it is just 800,690. I don't know how to say that number. Sorry, guys. There's my dyslexia. Since the destruction took place. Again, these figures are not very widely different from those given by the geologists who placed their glacial period 850,000 years ago. Then a woman was produced who came to Manu and declared herself his daughter, with whom he lived and begat the offspring of Manu. This refers to the physiological transformation of sexes during the third root race, and the allegory is too transparently clear to need much explanation. Of course, as already remarked, in the separation of sexes, and androgyny being was supposed to divide his body into two halves, as in the case of Brahma and Bach, and even of Adam and Eve. And thus the female is, in a certain sense, his daughter, just as he will be her son. the flesh of his and her flesh, and the bone of his and her bone. Let it be also well remembered that not one of our Orientalists have yet learned to discern in those contradictions and amazing nonsense, as some call the Puranas, that that a reference to a yuga may mean a round, a root race, and often a sub-race, as well as form a page torn out of pre-cosmic theogony. This double and triple meaning is proved by various references to one and the same individual, apparently under an identical name, while it refers in fact to events divided by entire kaplas. A good instance is that of Illa. She is first represented as one thing and then as another. In the exoteric legends, it is said that Manu, the long V name, desiring to create sons, instituted a sacrifice to Mitra and Varuna, but through a mistake of the officiating Brahmin, a daughter only was obtained Illa. Then through the favor of the gods, her sex is changed and she becomes a man. Then she is again turned into a woman, and so on, the fable adding that Siva and his consort was pleased that she would be male 1 month and female another. This had a direct reference to the third root race, whose men were androgynes. But some very learned Orientalists think and have declared that Illa was primarily food, nourishment, or liberation of milk, thence a stream of praise personified as a goddess of speech. The profane are not told, however, the reason why a liberation of milk or a stream of praise should be male and female by turn, unless indeed there is some interval evidence which the occultists fail to perceive. Interesting. And their most mystical meanings, a union of a very long S word, Manu, with the Vaksata Rupa, his own daughter, this being the first utilization of a dual principle, of which the V name Manu and Illa are a secondary and a third form, stands in cosmic symbolism as the root life, the germ from which spring all the solar systems, the worlds, angels, and gods. For as says Vishnu, from Manu all creation gods, Asuras, man must be produced. By him the world must be created, that which moves and moveth not. But we may find worse opponents than even the Western scientists and Orientalists. If on the question of figures, Brahmins may agree with our teachings, we are not so sure that some of them orthodox conservatives may not raise objections to the modes of procreation attributed to their Pitar Devatas. We shall be called upon to produce the works from which we quote, while they will be invited by us to read their own Puranas a little more carefully and with an eye to the esoteric meaning. And then we repeat again that they will find under the veil of more or less transparent allegories every statement made therein collaborated by their own works. 1 or 2 instances have already been given as regards the appearance of the second race, which is called the sweat-born. This allegory is regarded as a fairy tale, and yet it conceals a psychophysiological phenomenon and one of the greatest mysteries of nature. But in view, the chronological statements made herein is natural to ask. Sorry, guys. Could men exist 18 million years ago? To the occultism answer in the affirmative, notwithstanding all scientific objectors. Moreover, the duration covers only the long V name Manu, man, the male and female entity already separated into the distinct sexes. The 2.5 races that precede that event may have lived 300 million years ago, for all that science can tell. For the geological and physical difficulties in the way of the theory could not exist for the primeval etherical man of the occult teachings. The whole issue of the quarrel between the profane and the esoteric sciences depends upon the belief in and demonstration of the existence of an astral body within the physical, the former independent of the latter. Paul Dacier, the positivist, seems to have proven the fact pretty plainly, not to speak of the accumulated testimony of the ages and that of the modern spiritualists and mystics. It will be found difficult to reject the fact in our age of proofs, tests, and ocular demonstrations. The secret doctrine maintains that notwithstanding the general cataclysm and disturbances of our globe, which, owing to its being the period of its great physical development for the fourth round, is the middle point of the life allotted to it, were far more terrible and intense than during any of the three preceding rounds, the cycles of its earlier psychic and spiritual life, and of its semi-etherical conditions. Physical humanity has existed upon it for the last 18 million years. This period was preceded by 300 million years of the mineral and vegetable development. To this, all those who refuse to accept the theory of a boneless, purely etherical man will object. Science, which knows only of the physical organism, will feel indigent, and materialistic theology still more so. The first will object on logical and reasonable grounds based on the preconception that all animate organisms have always existed on the same plane of materiality in all the ages, the last on a tissue of most absurd fictions. The ridiculous claim usually brought forward by theologians is based on the virtual assumption that mankind on this planet have the honor of being the only human beings in the whole cosmos who dwell on a globe, and that they are consequently the best of their kind. Oh boy. The occultists who believe firmly in the teachings of the mother philosophy repel the objections of both theologians and scientists. They maintain on their side that during those periods when there must have been insufferable heat, even at the two poles, successive floods, upheaval of the valleys, and constant shifting of the great waters and seas, none of these circumstances could form an impediment to human life and organization, such as assigned by them to the early mankind. Neither the heterogeneity of ambient regions full of deleterious gases, nor the perils of a crust hardly consolidated could prevent the first and second races from making their appearance, even during the Carboniferous or the Silurian age itself. Thus, the monads destined to animate future races were ready for the new transformation. They had passed their phases of immortalization of plant and animal life from the lowest to the highest, and were waiting for their human, more intelligent form. Yet what could the plastic modelers do but follow the laws of evolutionary nature? Could they, as claimed by the biblical dead letter form, Lord God, like, or as Pygmalion in the Greek allegory, Adam Galatea, out of the volcanic dust and breathe a living soul into man? No, because the soul was already there, latent in its monad, and needed but a coding. Pygmalion, who fails to animate his statue, and I don't know how to say that name, Bahak Zevo of the Nazarene Gnostics, who fails to construct a human soul in the creature, are as conceptions far more philosophical and scientific than Adam taken in the dead letter sense, or the biblical Elohim creators. Esoteric philosophy, which teaches spontaneous generation after the Sista and Prajapati have thrown the seed of life on the earth, shows the lower angels able to construct physical man only, even with the help of nature, after having evolved the etherical form out of themselves and leaving the physical form to evolve gradually from its ethereal, or what would now be called protoplasmic model. Interesting. This will again be objected to spontaneous generation as an exploded theory, we shall be told. Pasteur's experiments dispose of it 20 years ago, and Professor Tyndall is against it. Well, suppose he is. He ought to know that should spontaneous generation be indeed proven impossible in our present world period and actual conditions which the occultists deny, still it would be no demonstration that it could not have taken place under different cosmic conditions, not only in the seas of the Laurentian period, but even on the convulsive earth. It would be interesting to know how science could ever account for the appearance of species and life on earth, especially of man, once that she rejects both the biblical teachings and spontaneous generation. Pasteur's observations, however, are far from being perfect or proven. Blanchard or Dr. Luthard reject their importance and show that they have none. The question is so far left sub judice, as well as that other one, when, at what period life appeared on the earth. As to the idea that Haeckel's Monron, a pinch of salt, has solved the problem of the origin of life, it is simply absurd. Those materialists who feel inclined to poo-poo the theory of the self-existent, the self-born heavenly man, represented as an ethereal astral man, must excuse even a trio in occultism laughing in his turn at some speculations of modern thought, after proving most learnedly that the primitive speck of protoplasm, moneron, is neither animal nor plant, but both, and that it has no ancestors among either of these, since it is the moneron which serves as a point of departure for all organized existence. We are finally told that the Monera are their own ancestors. This may be very scientific, but is very metaphysical also, too much so even for the occultists. If spontaneous generation has changed its methods now, owing perhaps to accumulated material on hand, so as to almost escape detection, it was in full swing in the genesis of terrestrial life. Even the simple physical form and the evolution of species show how nature proceeds. The scale-bound gigantic sura, the winged pterodactyl, and the megalosaurus, and the 100-feet-long iguanodon of the later period are the transformations of the earliest representatives of the animal kingdom found in the sediments of the primary epoch. There was a time when all those above enumerated antediluvian monsters appeared as filamentoid infusoria, however you say that, without shell or crust, with neither nerves, muscles, organs, nor sex, and reproduce their kind by gemination, as do microscopical animals also. The architects and builders of our mountain ranges, agreeably to the teachings of science, why not man in this case? Why should he not have followed the same law in his growth, gradual condensation? Every unprejudiced person would prefer to believe that primeval humanity had at first an etherical, or if so preferred, a huge filamentoid jelly-like form evolved by gods or natural forces which grew, condensed throughout millions of ages, and became gigantic in the physical impulse and tendency until it settled into the huge physical form of the fourth race man. Rather than believe him created of the dust of earth, literally, or from some unknown anthropoid ancestor. Anthropod. Nor does our esoteric history clash with scientific data, except on first appearance, as Dr. A. Wilson, FRS, says in a letter to Knowledge. Evolution, rather nature, in the light of evolution, has only been studied for some 25 years or so. That is, of course, a mere fractional space in the history of human thought. and just a mere fractional space that we do not know, lose all hope that materialist science will amend its ways and will gradually accept the esoteric teachings, even if at first divorced from their to science, to metaphysical elements. Has the last word on the subject of human evolution yet been said? Each answer to the great question, man's real place in nature, invariably assert by the followers of propounder, if not by himself, to be complete and final, remains in high authority and esteem. It may be for 1 century, it may be for 20, writes Professor Huxley. But as invariably time proves each reply to have been a mere approximation to the truth, tolerable chiefly on account of the ignorance of those by whom it was accepted, and wholly intolerable when tested by the larger knowledge of their successors. Will the eminent Darwinism admit the possibility of his Pythiacoid ancestry being assignable to the list of wholly intolerable beliefs in the larger knowledge of occultists? But whence the savage? Mere rising to the civilized state does not account for the evolution of form. In the same letter, The Evolution of Man, Dr. Wilson makes other strange confessions. Thus, he observes in answer to the queries put to knowledge by G.M. Has evolution affected any change in man? If so, what change? If not, why not? If we refuse to admit, as science does, that man was created a perfect being and then became degraded, there exists only another supposition, that of evolution. If man has arisen from a savage to a civilized state, that surely is evolution. We do not yet know, because such knowledge is difficult to acquire, if the human frame is subject to the same influences of those of lower animals. But there is little doubt that elevation from savagery to civilized life means and implies evolution, and that of considerable extent. Mentally, man's evolution cannot be doubted. The ever-widening sphere of thought has sprung from small and rude beginnings, like language itself, but man's ways of life, his power of adaptation to his surroundings and countless other circumstances have made the facts and course of his evolution very difficult to trace. This very difficult ought make the evolutionists more cautious in their affirmations. But why is evolution impossible if man was created a perfect being and then became degraded? At best, it can only apply to the outward physical man, a remark in Isis Unveiled. Darwin's evolution begins at the middle point instead of commencing for men, as for everything else from the universals. The Aristotle-Bachian method may have its advantages, but it has undeniably already demonstrated its defects. Pythagoras and Plato, who proceeded from the universals downwards, are now shown more learned in the light of modern science than was Aristotle. For he opposed and denounced the idea of the revolution of the earth and even of its rotundity. Almost all those, he wrote, who affirm that they have studied heaven in its most uniformity, claim that the earth is in the center. But the philosophers of the Italian school, otherwise called the Pythagoreans, teach entirely the contrary, because the Pythagoreans were initiates and they followed a deductive method, whereas Aristotle, the father of an inductive system, complained of those who taught that the center of our system was occupied by the sun and the earth was only a star, which by a rotary motion around the same center produces night and day. The same was regarded to man. The theory taught in the secret doctrine and now expounded is the only one which can, without falling into the absurdity of a miraculous man created out of the dust of the earth, or the still greater fallacy of man evolving from a pinch of slime salt, the ex-protoplasmic murion, account for his appearance on earth. Analogy is the guiding law in nature, the only true Ardendine's thread. that can lead us through the inextricable paths of her dominion toward her primal and final mysteries. Nature as a creative potency is infinite, and no generation of physical scientists can ever boast of having exhausted the list of her ways and methods, however uniform the laws upon which she proceeds. If we can conceive of a ball of fire mist becoming gradually as it rolls through eons of time in the interstellar space, a planet, a self-luminous globe, to settle into a man-bearing world or Earth, thus having passed from the soft plastic body into a rock-bound globe. And if we see on it everything evolving from the non-nucleated jelly speck that becomes the sacroid of the moron that passes from its protostatic state into the form of an animal to grow into a gigantic reptilian monster of the Mesozoic times, then dwindles again into the comparatively darfish crocodile, now confined solely to the tropical regions, and the universally common lizard. How can man alone escape the general law? There were giants on earth in those days, says Genesis, repeating the statement of all the other Eastern scriptures. And the Titans are found in anthropological and physiological fact. And as the hard-shelled crustacean was once upon a time a jelly speck, a thoroughly homogeneous particle of albumin in a firmly adhesive condition, so was the outward covering of primitive man, his early coat of skin, plus an immortal spiritual monad in a psychic temporary form and body within that shell. The modern hard muscular man, also impervious to any climate, was perhaps some 25 million years ago, just that the Heclean Monrion is strictly an organism without organs, an entirely homogeneous substance with a structureless albumin body within and a human form only outwardly. No man of science has the right in this century to find the figures of the Brahmins preposterous in the question of chronology, for their own calculations often exceed by far the claims made by esoteric science. This may easily be shown. Very interesting. I'm going to leave it there. We'll pick up on the next one because this goes on even further, and I don't want this to be too long where you're lost. So we'll have a part 3 next time to finish out stanza 6. Very long, extremely long stanza. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you all for showing up and sharing, subscribing, and helping me out in this very difficult time. Sending each and every one of you love, like a passion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths respectfully and mature. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.